Welcome to the new and candid series we're calling Pinot with Pag and Panettieri. Brought to you by the folks at SolarWinds MSP. We discuss the critical role that you play in this industry and where MSPs are going next to succeed. Got a question for us? Post it in the comments area and we'll cover it in a future edition. Hey, John, good to see you.
Hey, Joe. Nice backdrop. Nice to see you again.
Listen, I appreciate your time, especially with everything the world is dealing with these days. I really appreciate it. I certainly wanted to talk industry, MSPs, everything that's going on out in tech, especially for your MSP partners out there. Before we get into that, I actually wanted to talk a little bit of wine, believe it or not. Now, I've got 2 bottles of wine that showed up on my front doorstep from your team. What am I drinking here? I've got, I think we're starting with, is it called the Seeker?
Yeah. So yeah, some magic SolarWinds elves did their magic and some wine appeared. Is that what you're telling me?
That's the rumor. That's the rumor. And you'll notice it's a half glass. I'm not overdoing it. You know, we gotta, I don't want to video and drive.
Magically, the Seeker appeared at my house as well. And,
Beautiful.
And before we go into it, I have to do a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm actually on holiday this week.
Okay.
I'm on vacation, so it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon here, East Coast time, and I'm on the shore here in New Jersey. So I'm not officially working, but they said it's okay if I have a little bit of wine with you. But yeah, so I'm glad you got the wine. Mm-hmm. I'm actually a fan of Pinot Noirs. I like the light taste that for the most part that they bring. And I'm not usually a big, heavy, dark wine kind of drinker. And heck, it goes with Panettieri and Pagliuca. So I said, hey,
it sure does.
let's run with it. So we've got a couple of Italian guys drinking some French wine, but yeah, so this one's actually from France. It's hold on. I have a little bit of a sip because I'm smelling it and I'm starting to salivate. So I have to have a little bit of a sip. Yeah, really good. So just as I remembered, so definitely a silky, little bit of a cherry type of wine. Look, I picked this wine really, one, because I like Pinot Noir, but because of the name and the Seeker. And when I think about our MSPs, they're always like the seeker of finding that solution, the seeker of trying to solve the answer for that problem. And I found it to be a good fitting way to kind of start this off. And it's a good wine. It's a wine that I enjoy with my family. So I figured you'd enjoy it. So salute, Joe.
Salute. And it is great to see you, by the way. And all kidding aside, thank you for the wine. You know, it's for those of you who aren't Italian, wine is a big deal in our culture. And it's about family. It's about gathering. It's about communication. Sometimes some arguing around the Italian table, but definitely about some communication. And I do appreciate your time today, especially with everything the MSPs are dealing with. From your vantage point, here, we're recording this in June. How do you think we're doing as a quote unquote MSP industry at this point? Have we, I don't want to use the word rebounded, because I think the story probably differs from geography to geography. What's your take on it?
I guess to continue on our wine analogy, I'm mostly a glass half full.
Okay.
And when it comes to the MSPs, I don't want to say fully full, because there are pockets in the community, in our MSP community, and we have sisters and brothers that are struggling based on they might be on certain verticals that are being affected a little bit more. They might be in some economic areas that might be affected more. So I don't want to be ignorant and say that it's all rosy for everyone.
Yeah.
but when I take a look at what the MSP community has done over the last 60, 90 days, it's been quite remarkable. I take a look at just what the world has done right here, where I'm not here right now, but where I'm from in Boston, I'm sure all over the world, we're seeing businesses adapt, transform immediately. We're seeing governments take action immediately. Things that people were talking about or debating for maybe quarters or years or even decades, because of this situation that we find ourselves in, took action right away. And I'm seeing that with MSP. The interesting thing about this horrible pandemic is it's forced folks to take action. A lot of the times, Joe, you've usually you and I see each other live at our events, and it's always nice to see you live. But as you sit there and hear a lot of my constant themes, I'm big, whether it be talking to my team, whether it be talking to MSP partners, whether it be talking to my kids about this notion of change, and change is good, and adapting. But what this, the way that this unfolded, it wasn't really time to evolve or really think about it. Folks needed to really transform. And folks had to push some of these agendas forward. So whether it be the digital transformation, or making sure that all these endpoints were secure, making sure remote access was key for their workforce, for their employees, for the customer, it just accelerated. It really pushed the fast forward button in some ways. And then also what I found personally is it got back to, and you just talked about the table, the Italian table, and the talking and the communication. Communication is key. It really brought back some of the core human elements, right? And this is not just MSP, but I tell folks I've been on more bike rides in the last 60 days than I have probably in the last 20 years. And there's more 100% attendance at Pagliuca family dinners over the last couple of quarters. So there's some good parts. And from a business point of view, the thing that really has been cemented or reinforced is, you talked about the communication, is this customer experience, right? We're inviting ourselves. I'm inviting you into this home that I'm in right now. You're inviting me into your backyard. When I'm talking to my MSPs, they said, we've talked more with our customers in the past 60 days than we have in the past 5 years. And it's on a much more intimate level. And it's much more on a level of like, I need this from you. I need you to step up. And time again, the MSPs have stepped up. I mentioned in my all hands meeting, and I'm sure you saw it, but it gave me quite a amount of pride, but also quite a sense of responsibility. As this pandemic went from Asia to Western Europe to some of these other parts of the world, and as the epicenter moved across the globe, I could actually see it in our data. I could actually see our MSPs stepping up. And so what do I mean by that? When it was over, Lombardia in Italy or in Spain, our MSPs in those areas logged into their systems twice as much as they had before. They were adding devices, making sure I could see our MSPs jumping in and taking and jumping in and actually taking the reins and helping their SMBs transition, helping their own workforce and their customers. And honestly, I was proud to see our community standing up the way that it did. I was proud to see that our SolarWinds team taking a bunch of different measures to try to stand up and support those folks. And it really showed a lot of, again, fast forwarding on some of this technology and future parts, but then reinforcing some of these good basic human element parts.
Yeah, no doubt. Some of the trends I saw, and you may have heard it from your partners as well, it's echoed across the industry, was you had a situation where, to your point, I do think 2 years of digital transformation happened in 2 weeks. Like everyone had to support work from home or work from anywhere. The MSPs had to get that set up. There was this mad rush to get the quote unquote project work done without necessarily charging for the project work, because the MSPs wanted to hold on to the recurring revenue and to your point, the relationships. But now that we're done with that initial burst of project work, and maybe some of the pendulum swinging back to more of a hybrid of work from anywhere and work from the traditional office, do you see the MSPs moving into any particular longer term lanes? Maybe it's security or UCaaS or VDI. I mean, how do you see the MSPs charting that course forward?
We're fortunate enough to have, the 25,000 MSPs across the globe, and they range, right? They range from 1 or 2 person shops all the way to billion-dollar corporations, quite frankly. And what I tell my team, what I tell each and one of them, it's a very personal journey, right? It depends on what success is and how you map out success. What I do see is that there are some macro trends that will go across. Right? I do see, this is in our data, this is in enterprise data, this is in even some of our competitors' data, that the work structure that as it was before this While we're not sure what that new normal is, we're definitely sure that that old world will probably really never reshape in the same exact manner, and for a lot of good reasons as well, right? So what does that mean? That means our MSPs need to be ready and focus on what this new world will be. The flexible workforce, or this work from home movement, is definitely here to stay. That means, what does that mean from an opportunity point of view? Making sure that folks can access their data securely and from a productivity point of view remotely, making sure that as people have now become much more mobile, how are we protecting that user, whether they be within the firewall, outside of the firewall, on their mobile device, and making sure that we're mobile enough and that we're giving our MSPs tools so they can secure that SMB wherever that user is going. So I'm not sure, honestly, and again, that's a personal choice. I do see there will be much more opportunity. I think of the MSP medium term opportunity. When I talk to the MSPs, what I see was this first wave, right? And that first wave, caught most of us, unfortunately, by surprise. And it was, let's prepare for this first wave. And now we know. And, and by the way, apologies for using this first wave. I'm not talking about the virus or the cases. I'm really talking about this transformation that's happening. And that was immediate. That's that immediate transformation. Now we have a little bit of time. Now we can figure out what that next wave is. But for me, it's a huge opportunity, regardless of the path, regardless of that personal journey that the MSPs decide that they want to go to. They have an opportunity for me, and it's along 3 different dimensions. One, there's always a little bit of a pressure, price erosion. How do I make sure I'm not a commodity? How do I make sure that my service can stand up from other ones? Well, guess what? This is a huge opportunity for the MSP community, for that specific MSP, to build that customer relationship, to help blaze that path for that SMB, to help them transform so that their business is ready, that their business is monitored correctly, that their business is secure, and rise above being just that commodity player, right? Number one. Number two, one of the other challenges that MSPs have: talent. I can't get enough talent. I can't retain my talent. This is talent. This is scarcity. Well, look, unfortunately, we know that there's a lot of folks that, not necessarily in the MSP community, there might be IT folks in other spaces, but what we do know is that there are more folks on the market now. So when I talk to my MSPs, I say, hey, this is an opportunity. Retain your talent. And go out and attract the talent that you need to go help shape whatever shape that's going to be. And the last one, without a doubt, there is that need for an MSPs to expand their service, whether it be pushing on that virtualization path, whether it be to properly now secure this new workforce that we're seeing, or whether it be adding on more cloud services, helping to monitor the connective tissue and the connective points between these cloud services. There's multiple lanes that these MSPs can expand into. My approach, for me, it's stick to what you're good at. Can focus on retaining your customer and listening to what the customer has to say, and grow your business based on what the direction that your customer base needs. What I tell my sales force, my account managers, my technical support: now's the time to listen. Now's not a time to talk. Listen to what the MSPs need. MSPs, listen to what your customers need. Help that shape your path forward and your strategy forward.
Yeah, good advice. I think that this industry is in listening mode, which is a very good thing. I also think, to your point, as the MSPs hear from their customers, the customer may point out, hey, here's what I need and here's when I need it by. But I think it's a fluid conversation. That the path forward may not be a direct line. It's going to be fluid in this market, in terms of how the MSP gets the customer there, or what the customer thinks they need by next week versus what they need in a month. I just think we're just in a fluid market for the long haul at this point. But to your point, the opportunities are there for those who remain fluid and for those who listen. In terms of that journey with the end customer, you hear a lot of MSPs and vendors as well talk about the customer experience and customer outcomes. One of my concerns is sometimes that's a little too touchy-feely and not enough. Well, how do you measure that? How is it more than a thank you to the customer, et cetera? I mean, do you think the MSPs are doing a good job measuring the quote unquote outcomes, or how do they even get started doing that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I can tell you customer success has been a big focus point inside of the SolarWinds organization. And I'll share with you a little bit what we're doing there, and just to kind of shed some light for the MSPs, and then I'll answer your question a little bit more specifically, right? So what we've done is we've invested in making sure that that there's enough touch points that we can have deeper conversations and deeper interactions with the customer. So the focus is pivoted more toward quality. So what that means for me as the business leader is a bigger investment in personnel and human resources, because we don't want quantity. We don't want, oh, hey, make sure you're calling the customer and having a superficial conversation with these guys to kind of check that box or try to sell them a new SKU or something like that. No, listen, that means a deeper conversation. That might mean a 60, 90-minute conversation to really understand what the customer needs, to do it properly, and to really understand what that customer needs. That's going to require more of a human investment. You can't fake that. So what we've done is we've increased personnel that are actually non-quota carrying people, and their objective is CSAT, customer satisfaction. And we measure that, Joe, and this kind of goes to so we measure that in, well, we actually ask them, so that's good. We ask them, hey, are we servicing you? Are we failing you in what capacity? Tell me what capacity we are failing you in. What's been successful for you? What's not been successful? And then we get actual data on that. But then we look at the product usage and the adoption, right? And we're keen to look at which offerings that they're using and how they're adopting. And if we see a snag, hey, we noticed that this customer's not adding any devices, or it seems like this customer is struggling with one of our security offerings, we actually look at the data and try to be proactive as much as we can, and reach out and say, hey, we've noticed that you're not necessarily covering all. We noticed that 70%, 80% of your devices that you're managing that you have EDR on it. Great. Do you know that this 20% you're leaving exposed? That could be a potential area of exposure or vulnerability for you. What can we do to make sure that you're fully covered? So we're trying to look at their business through their lens and try to give them that advice from a technology point of view, also from a business point of view. So I think the MSPs, by the way, I think that upper quartile is doing this already. I think that upper quartile is having that conversation, having those QBRs, getting that feedback from the customer, listening to what they need, not just pitching them a SKU or trying to sell them the business, really trying to drive value. And my advice to folks that might not be following that is invest in that, because what I found is that people in this day and age are much more invested in that human relationship. They're looking for you to be that guide to help shepherd them through these uncertain times.
Yeah. So a couple takeaways from that, or my reaction to it is, you've raised the point. We should be in listen mode, absolutely. But sometimes that's more than a customer conversation. Sometimes the listen mode is look at your data. What is your data telling you about what the end customer is consuming or isn't consuming, may need, may not need, et cetera? And then you brought up, that very interesting data point, the quartiles of the MSP market. The first time I heard the term was from service leadership, and they talk about how the top performing MSPs, the top quartile, these are rough numbers, so don't hold me to it. But generally speaking, that top quartile is roughly, dropping 20% to the bottom line, which is impressive, right? And then we got the bottom quartile of the market, which is probably break even, some of them losing money. And so they're all quote unquote MSPs, but yet a certain portion of them, a quarter of them, are doing this 20% profit margin. Do you think there are certain common denominators in terms of what the top quartile is doing? And do you think the rest of the market can ever really move and either emulate or aspire to reach those top performers?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'll start with the quote unquote that you said, right? So the quote unquote MSPs, right? And that's a great way to phrase it. What we find is, while some folks might associate themselves or identify themselves as MSPs, I don't think they really have structured their business in a way that sets them up for that rich recurring revenue stream. They continue to have a good portion of their break fix business that they're dependent on. And look, by the way, a portion of your business as break fix makes perfect sense. But if you're 100% dependent on this break fix model, you're going to kind of ebb and flow. You're not going to have that utilization. So for me, the first thing is, how do I push more and more of my business and understand and make sure my customers understand the proactive, predictive nature that I can bring to them, that business added value that I can bring to them. They're okay with this recurring revenue stream. I can stabilize my workforce, make sure my workforce is utilized, and then I can leverage the second thing. And the second thing is automation, right? If I know right now we have MSPs that are not using SolarWinds backup, and this is not a plug, it's just a fact. And as a result of that, they have technicians that are spending 10, 12, 16 hours a week monitoring screens for their different backup offerings. It does not make any sense. It's not adding any value. They have disparate different security offerings. They're not using automation or the scripting, whether it be a SolarWinds product or not. They're not using the automation or basic scripting that they can do to get their technicians out of doing the mundane tasks. Well, guess what? A lot of folks think that's job security. I look at that as potential profit that you can generate, because the more you can elevate your folks and get them out of doing that mundane task, number one, you're going to retain them, because look, let's be honest, no one really wants to just do that mundane task. And number two, you get them focused on a better, richer revenue generating thing. The third thing is expanding the portfolio and becoming that trusted advisor. And what that means is you're not just monitoring the workstation, you're not just monitoring the server, but you are helping them with the security offering. You're making sure that their data is secure, their networks are secure, their users are secure. Why? Because if they're not, they run the risk of having an extinction event. If they have an extinction event, they no longer will be your customer, full stop. And so the best MSPs, the top quartile, what are they doing? They're expanding into security. They're adding more security offerings. They're leveraging automation a great deal. They're leveraging the right mix of project-based work and a good recurring revenue stream. I actually think the formula is pretty straightforward. I think service leadership has done a good job documenting it. I think we've tried to do a good job documenting it, quite frankly. I think the industry's done a good job documenting it. Saying it and doing it are two different things, and the ones that are doing it are the ones that are benefiting it from a profitability and from a growth point of view. Because if you're struggling with profit, you're going to struggle to grow, right? It's Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? Like you need to make sure that you're breaking even, you're profitable before you can really thinking about expansion.
Yeah, that's a great point. And service leadership and others have made it to me, which is before you go chasing growth, really understand your financial numbers and understand where your profit margin is right now, and fine tune your profit to march toward the 20% margin. Get there and then focus on growth. So great points there. Now, hey, John, I got a few more questions for you, but I'm also about to show you how little I know about wine. We cracked open 2 bottles at the beginning of this conversation. We've had a glass of the first one. I forget which one we started with.
Yeah.
So where are we in terms of 1 and 2?
Yeah, good. So we started with the Seeker, which is the French Pinot Noir. So let's go. It's a great idea. Let's not forget about. So we have the Crusher.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Pinot Noir. So it's a Pinot Noir grape, but it's from a vineyard in California. This one's a little fruitier than the previous one, a little bit more acidic than the previous one, but again, sticks to that whole Pinot Noir bit. Again, I really chose it, to be honest with you, because I like the name, and as I think about my MSPs and my hope for them, and my hope for all of us in the community, is that we go on and we crush whatever the goal that we have in front of us, both from a health and from a business point of view. So I'm gonna go pour this one a little bit, and then
yeah, through the wizardry of my preparation for the podcast, a webcast, I already had it poured. So
well done.
Cheers. Very nice.
Fruitier, a little bit darker than the first one, but this is great, Joe. It's 1:30. I'm a couple of glasses of wine in. This is. You can ask me anything you want at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I will avoid that temptation. I had a few questions that were about to come out, but I'll put the muzzle on. I'll stick with the industry questions. And so a couple more questions. And this, this bottle was the crusher. And sometimes you hear about, this MSP's crushing it, or this vendor's absolutely crushing it in the market right now. Phrases that really talk about business momentum, business performance, maximum performance. What do you think it means for a vendor to be crushing it right now for the partners? A partner who just thinks the world of their vendor, what is the vendor delivering for them?
Yeah, it's probably along a couple of different dimensions, right? They're making sure that they're providing a solution set or a software set that they can rely on, that is helping them execute on their job, and that actually has a couple of different layers on it as well, right? So we spend a good amount of our time and quite frankly resources and financial resources making sure that the products that we put out in the market are safe. And there's been a good amount of talk in the industry. We just recently implemented more stringent kind of MFA rules, so that we put a little tighter controls around some of our access, because we know the bad guys are out there. And so, it's, you follow the industry, you've been reporting on it. The bad guys are out there even more today than they were before, trying to capitalize, unfortunately, on what's going on. So a killer vendor in the space, first and foremost, has to start with making sure that the way that they build their products, that the products are secure, the way that their MSPs and customers are accessing the products are secure, and then they're providing security software products that they can go make sure that their end customers are secure. So that for me is a big thing, is the security. They also need to be delivering an offering that can be consumable, or an offering that can be consumable that for the MSP, whether they be, again, a 2-person shop or a 2,000-person shop. And what I mean by that, where we support an ecosystem kind of strategy where, I would love for everyone to use SolarWinds technology from A to Z type of thing. But we also support folks using other vendors, and we spend a good amount of time making sure those integrations are safe, by the way, that's important. But they're also efficient, so that the MSPs can push data from one bit to the other. At the end of the day, it's about making our MSPs efficient. It's about making them profitable. So it's about making them successful, even if that means they're leveraging other folks' software. That's okay. That's okay with me. We understand folks might have a different path or a different journey. Again, I'd love them to use all of SolarWinds products, but we support that type of framework. And I think that mindset is what MSP should be looking for a vendor. And then the last part is the partnership on the business front, right? We've spent, it's funny. I've, on a personal side, I've seen a lot of vendors, the way that they've interacted with me as a consumer through this pandemic, and the folks that are communicating with us on a regular basis, being transparent, letting us know what they're thinking, how they're approaching things, are the vendors that I hold in high regard, and now it makes actually an easier decision. I will stick with that vendor. And we've tried to do the same, right? Colin Knox and Mike Collin have done a tremendous job over the last 60 days, putting a ton of information out there, whether they be webcasts, live videos, streaming, office hours, where you can get one-on-one conversations from our experts, from our head nerds on whatever problem that might be. How do I better automate? I did have to reduce some staff. I now have less staff. How can I do more with less? How do I get funding from my government, whether they be in the US or internationally? How do I go about doing that? We've got experts from within SolarWinds, but then we had experts from outside of SolarWinds come in to provide this knowledge, because look, these are uncertain times. And the more that it can be a collective intelligence that we can leverage each other, that my MSPs can, hop on our back a little bit and leverage some of the know-how that we were able to procure for them. That's great. So for me, it's a multifaceted approach. It's not just one dimension. I'm hoping MSPs see that. I'm hoping MSPs, when they think about partnership, they're looking at it from a 360 point of view. And that's the way we look at it. And when we think about putting the right amount of human resource and capital behind our effort, it's always along those 3 or 4 different dimensions.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Now, just an FYI for our viewers and listeners, if you have follow-up questions for John, post podcast, post video cast, you can post a comment, and we'll make sure we get that question raised in a future conversation. John and I are doing these quarterly for the rest of 2020. And John, as I mentioned at the top of the program, we're recording this in late June. ChannelE2E, we've covered roughly 250 M&A deals so far this year. That's worldwide, by the way. It's not just North America. A good portion of those 250 deals have involved what I would consider MSPs or IT service providers, or frankly, IT consulting firms that have an MSP component. Wondering from your partner base, do you think that whether it's the pandemic or some of the economic fallout we're seeing and now economic restarts, any shifts in M&A, or do you think it's just going to continue based on the demographics of the MSP ownership?
So I think there was a pause. There was inevitably a pause, right? We saw M&A slowing down a little bit, especially within the MSP community, maybe not necessarily with the independent software vendors. But just as I outlined opportunities for the MSPs, whether they be human resources or separating yourself from a commodity, I think there will be a lot of opportunity to ramp up M&A activity. We're seeing more and more, what's commonly referred to as smart money, private equity, venture capital, or other type of financial lenders come in, and they understand the power of the MSP community. They understand the power of this recurring revenue stream that they're generating. They understand the power that the MSPs have such providing such a service to the SMB, not just making sure that their printers are working, right? Those days are long gone, but that they're providing this business intelligence, this level of business continuity. And so we're seeing a lot of smart money. And what happens when that happens is that the way that these companies will grow will continue to be in more in this M&A kind of path. When I talk to MSPs, and look, this isn't for everybody, but when I talk to some of the MSPs that are a little bit bigger and they're thinking about their growth strategy, I always ask them to think about their inorganic growth strategy. And that comes in two different flavors. You can be the acquirer, or you can be the seller. And how do you position yourself to better acquire or to be sold? And so I think it's coming back. Actually, we can feel it already. We can see it already. When we talked to MSPs, we had our survey. We can share that survey. It was the majority of actually MSPs are expecting in the next 12 months to be part of some type of process. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. That means they might be looking, or they might be being looked at and reviewed. So it absolutely will be coming back. And I actually see it coming back pretty fast in the second half of 2020 for sure.
Yeah, I would agree. Overall, so ChannelE2E, we've been around now, give or take 5 years. And as you know, I covered the market before ChannelE2E. And one of the reasons we launched ChannelE2E was purely on demographics in terms of the age of the MSP business owner, and E2E being the entrepreneur to exit journey. We knew that M&A would grow based purely on demographics. It would continue to grow through 2022. So I think the numbers will continue to climb. I think the variable is valuation. That's always the variable. We'll see. But I think you're right. We're seeing it come back as well. Now, I mentioned a couple times, we're recording this in late June. I want to give our viewers some homework before we sign off. Before we come back to our next podcast in Q3, what would be the steps you would like to see MSPs take over the next quarter, so that when you and I reconvene in 3 months, what is it that you'd like to hear that the MSPs achieved or did or pursued ultimately? Yeah.
Man, it really goes back to my CFO roots, Joe. And I know you attended the All Partners meeting, but and I mentioned it there, but I'll mention it now for the broader audience. It goes back to my Benjamin Franklin quote, right? Failing to plan is planning to fail. Mm-hmm. And the homework assignment that I would give is really twofold. Set your goals, revisit your mission, make sure in these times of uncertainty that you don't deviate from your mission. Restate your mission. Make sure that mission is true. Set the goals to accomplish that mission. And then, more importantly, back to the Ben Franklin quote, plan. So, the part when I've had these conversations on a little bit more of an intimate level with some of our PAC members in SolarWinds. I say, hey, John, how do I plan for the uncertain, right? And it's a good question, and it's a reasonable question. And I said, well, look, you can set some bookends for yourself and make sure you align on that top goal and build some contingency plans. So, in scenario A or scenario B, when you after you listen to your customers and you understand what's going on, how do I support these customers? What happens if customer X goes away, or this type of vertical kind of goes away? What type of services can I get? How do I achieve my goal? Do the planning now. If you do the planning now, regardless of how these scenarios will unfold, you will be in a place to execute. All of this is changing at such a fast pace. You don't have time to make a plan. You need to do that planning right now. And as these things unfold, then you just go and execute. That's what we're doing at SolarWinds. We spend a lot of our time planning, thinking about the different scenarios that we need to do to make sure we're servicing our MSPs, that we're making sure that they have access to the information, regardless of the bits, that the investment that they're seeing is paying off for them, that we're doing a bunch of contingency planning. That's the homework assignment. And I can't stress it enough. If as an MSP owner or a head technician, if you are responsible for other folks in your organization, you're responsible to deliver shareholder value. That's your primary goal. You need to make sure that you have a plan, that you have a couple of different plans because of this uncertain time, and then start to execute on that plan and keep that mission and vision to be your kind of your north, so to speak.
All right. Well, you know what? I look forward to hearing more about the MSPs out there and their true north and how they progress over the next 3 months. And I'll reconvene with you in 3 months. Thanks for your time, John. I appreciate it.